When we think of all these new internet scammers offering us overpriced courses, inner circles and exclusive access to the guru himself, it sometimes feels like this kind of audacious scamming is a rather new occurrence. But this perception is far from reality. The only thing that's changed really is the platform and the narrative.
Knowledge.
But what people don't realize is Tai Lopez paved the way for an invasion of what you can call internet online gurus.
He basically structured it in such a way whereas if you join the inner circle, you're going to get hired.
Is Dan Locke a cult? Yes or no? Is High Ticket Closer a cult? Yes or no?
Yes.
My friend, on today's episode of Scammers Gonna Scam, we will uncover the truth about one of the greatest scammers in history and what happened to his victims. When we think of infamous scammers of the past, you might think of conmen like Frank Abagnale, who was depicted in the movie Catch Me If You Can, starring Leonardo DiCaprio. And he had some bold and successful scams, not gonna lie.
You're one of the greatest conmen of all time. You're the daddy of them all.
But he is nothing compared to our main character of today's video. Did you ever hear of the great Mr. MacGregor? No, not this one. That is Connor McGregor, and he likes to punch and kick people really hard. I'm talking about this MacGregor. His first name is not Connor, but instead just Gregor. That's right. This, my friend, is Gregor MacGregor. Kick-ass name if you ask me. So, who was he and what did he do to deserve the title of one of the biggest scammers in history? If you don't want to hear his full backstory, just skip this next bit. Gregor MacGregor was a Scottish soldier, adventurer and, well, conman that was born in 1786. Being a direct descendant from the Gregor clan with a strong family tradition in fighting, Gregor MacGregor was an officer in the British Army from 1803 to 1810. He served in the Venezuelan War of Independence in 1812, quickly became a general and over the next 4 years operated against the Spanish on behalf of both Venezuela and its neighbor New Grenada. Keep in mind that he fought for Venezuela, as this will be relevant later in this video. While Gregor MacGregor had some success in, for instance, capturing Amelia Island in 1817, he's also known for just leaving British volunteer troops under his command. Not the greatest sign of character. But it really gets interesting once he returns to Britain in 1821. There he claimed that King George Frederick Augustus of the Mosquito Coast in the Gulf of Honduras had created him Cacique of Pueyes. Quite certainly I just butchered that pronunciation there. Sorry. Well, it can be translated roughly to Prince of Pueyes. Now, what is Pueyes, you might ask yourself, as you probably have never ever heard of it. Good question. MacGregor himself described Pueyes as a developed colony in Central America with a community of British settlers. So Pueyes was an independent nation in the Bay of Honduras, supposedly. But what did MacGregor want? Well, he wanted the same as modern scammers. Money. Lots of it. So he began recruiting new settlers and investors for his new nation. He published an extensive 355 pages long guidebook targeting specifically settlers. The book Sketch of the Mosquito Shore, including the territory of Pueyes, appeared in Edinburgh and London around 1822. While it says to have been the work of Thomas Strangeways, it was actually written either by MacGregor himself or his accomplices. This intentionally deceiving booklet described the Pueysian climate as remarkably healthy, agreeing admirably with the constitution of Europeans. The soil was so fertile that a farmer could have 3 maize harvests a year, and he predicted profits of millions of dollars. The natives were not just cooperative, but intensively pro-British. The capital was named St. Joseph, inhabited by as many as 20,000 people, with a theatre, an opera house, and a domed cathedral. There was also the Bank of Pueyes, the Pueysian Houses of Parliament, and a royal palace. Now you might think, who would just believe all of this without any reproof? Just because someone published a book doesn't mean the content is true. If you think like this, you are ahead of most people in this world. Because The printed word itself bears some authority, especially in book form. That is true nowadays, but even more back then. Today, it is much easier to publish a book on, for instance, Amazon, but it still has quite a bit of influence on the reader if your thoughts are published in a book. And in the eyes of those that believed MacGregor, there was no substantial proof and really no good reason to doubt him. He presented actual depictions of the land and even an official Bank of Praise currency, printed by MacGregor himself in Scotland. The drawings were of course also created by him. By the way, he targeted specifically his fellow Scots, as they would trust him more easily as he was Scottish himself. So don't let anyone fool you only because you share a similarity like nationality. Back to the Praise currency. MacGregor went on to exchange these worthless dollar notes to his would-be settlers, essentially handing them a worthless piece of paper and taking their real British money in exchange. That is a great return on investment. Not only that, but he also sold Parisian land in the form of certificates, and as the demand was so high for this presumably lucrative investment, he could even raise the price of these certificates without diminishing sales. Apparently, many buyers invested their life savings. Kind of like how it is today with these altcoins. Essentially, all of this was a grand investment fraud of the earlier years. So, what happened to his victims? And what happened to MacGregor himself? Let's start with his victims. While some only lost their money, others faced a far sinister fate. In total, roughly 250 eager settlers moved to the Promised Land. These settlers found a rather different reality than what was promised to them. There was no lush land to be easily farmed on. Instead, the settlers found a lot of mud, forests and mountains, and lots of mosquitoes. Diseases like malaria and yellow fever took over the startled settlers. Additionally, there was no sign of the glorious city of St. Joseph. Remember, this city was supposed to be inhabited by as many as 20,000 people. In the beginning, many settlers could not believe their situation. It was just unbelievable that the great prince himself has misled them. They sought for alternative explanations. Maybe they were just at the wrong location, or it was simply a terrible misunderstanding. In the end, all these attempts to bend the reality did not help at all. Of the initial 250 settlers, at least 180 died and fewer than 50 ever returned to Britain. At this point, you would love to hear that MacGregor was brought to justice and paid for his heinous crimes. And I would love to tell you exactly that, but that's not at all accurate, and that's not what happened. MacGregor did flee from London to France, where he repeated the scam after a while. Although in France he was in fact put into prison, only to be let go due to insufficient evidence. In the end, he returned to Venezuela. You remember, he had fought in the Venezuelan War of Independence on behalf of Venezuela. Therefore, he was acknowledged as a Venezuelan citizen and became a respected member of the local community. As a general in the Venezuelan army, he even received a military pension. Upon his death in 1845, the Venezuelan president, various ministers and the military chiefs marched behind his coffin while he was being buried with full military honors in the Caracas Cathedral. Imagine that. You believe this guy, who is a prince, supposedly. You feel so much hope and probably even joy about this new and exciting business opportunity. Maybe you've heard that one before. You leave everything you have behind to migrate to a promised land where your life will certainly be 100 times better. And then, as this dude deceived you and scammed you, you die horribly. So, what is our main takeaway from this story? Don't believe people promising you heaven on earth, don't give them your money, and don't let them take your life. Even if their name is Gregor MacGregor and they call themselves Prince of Poes. Thanks for watching.